been a change in the tide for New York Democrats. A Siena College poll shows Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the most popular Dem in the state. And for the first time, Senator Chuck Schumer sinks to 39% favorability amongst voters, a two-decade low for the Senate's top Democrat. Kayleigh McEnany joins us now. I think a few things are happening. One, Schumer's been here a long time, and people are like ready for something new. Like, the shtick is old. Two, I think that he is seen as part of the Biden cover-up, and that is not good, and part of the group that basically lost again to Donald Trump. Yeah, and he made that deal with Republicans, obviously, that really put him underwater with progressives. So he's not up for re-election until 2028. She could try to unseat him, but I really think she has her eye on something bigger. I think she looks at running for president and taking the mantle from Bernie Sanders. You know, Nate Silver said that he thinks she could be the pick. She definitely, if you look at YouGov, among Democrats, 61% favorable. That puts her at the highest favorable of any Democrat who hasn't run for president. But that's among Democrats. She repels the very voters that the party repelled in 2024, centrist, independents. So you can win a primary, perhaps. That's still a big haul. But winning a general election is a much different thing. But I would watch out for her. I mean, she's pulling in tens of thousands of people. Quarter one. And raising a lot of money. Yes, quarter one, 2 times any other quarter amount she'd raised at $9.6 million. And that, she was already a prolific fundraiser. She's out raising herself now.
You're very right about the Schumer deal from 2 months ago. That really, it was like a dagger in the heart of a lot of Democrats and progressives especially. Financial Times, here's the data right now about the movement of the Democratic Party. Put it on screen right now. You see the percentage of those who moved further to the left, all right? I want you to focus on the net percentage support for increasing or cutting immigration. Screen right, that's moved 40 points. Wow. Hence, I mean, that's how you understand now how, whether it's Van Hollen from Maryland or the 4 Democratic lawmakers who went to El Salvador just this past week, Kelly.
Yeah, that's how you understand. Exactly. They all are looking at primaries. They get through the primary and then they think they can win a general election. That's why it's so interesting to see Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom buck the trend. While Walz and all these others are doing these incomprehensible things, Van Hollen, they're looking towards perhaps presidential bids. The other two are saying, hey, I think I could swing my way through a primary and still win a general election. They're maintaining that long game where you have others maintaining the short game. But how do you thread this needle? You need a movement like Democrat, someone like an Obama figure that can thread a needle the way that he did, still won moderate voters, became an icon in Democratic politics. And I don't know that they have that person. Well, they also have this is the New York Times headline. What is dark woke? Democrats are trying out a new attitude. It's provocative, edgy, and perilously towing the line of not being too offensive. This is like all the cursing, even from people that will say, like, I never really do this, but they told me to, so I will. And it's so cringy. But those are the kind of people that you're trying to put into a coalition. I don't think you can get there with this. Yeah, the cursing is really interesting, as if that's going to, create some sort of movement that's going to save you. Yeah, dark woke. I remember Dark Brandon. That didn't work. That was President Joe Biden, and they tried the aviators. The gimmicky kind of shifts, they don't end up working. So dark woke, I think this is a blip on the radar, just like Dark Brandon was.
Republican said the best you can squeeze out is Chuck Schumer and TikTok and Cory Booker going on for 25 hours.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a pretty good line.
That is.
Kayleigh, thank you. We'll see you at noon today, all right?
See you at noon.
Nice
Power Panel, Caroline Downey, National Review staff writer, and Fred Hicks, founder and president of Hicks Evaluation Group. Great to see you both. Fred, is AOC the top of your party now?
Listen, AOC has somehow or another managed to captivate the consciousness of conservatives ever since she came onto the scene.
That is not an answer to my question. I'm not asking you about what the people on the right say. I'm asking you about people in your party. I'm going to take that as a no, by the way. You didn't embrace her?
Listen, AOC is doing what she needs to do, and that is calling attention to the failures of the Trump administration. And I applaud her for that. And she's also tapping into the fears of American voters, be they Democrats, independents, or even traditional Republicans. And so whether or not she's the leader of the Democratic Party, I can't say that. That's something that the party's working through right now. But what she is doing is she's giving voice to what now the majority of Americans are saying, that they are not happy with what's going on in America.
All right. Well, I don't think her constituents are happy, Caroline. We showed pictures from parts of Queens and the Bronx, which are her district. And it's a dangerous mess on the streets where this particular congresswoman says her popularity is enough. What do you say?
Yeah, the legacy of progressivism, Harris, is not only EV mandates and draconian dictates over Americans' lives, but it's ruin and chaos and mayhem in our streets because of bail reform policies, which have let recidivist criminals back out of jail. And of course, that has diminished the quality of life for so many Americans. But Harris, Democrats, the reason why that they're basically saying at this point that they don't feel like the moderate old guard is capturing their rage against Trump. And so the base is ready to burn it all down. They're looking for revolutionary figures. But I think the fool's errand there in elevating Democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders and AOC is that they lost the working class. Trump won rural voters. He won low-income, non-college educated voters. So, Bernie Sanders and AOC, they can stump and do these speeches in the Midwest, but that doesn't translate to national buy-in of progressive policies.
So,
well, Fred, I know you have a thought. Jump in.
I do. So listen, I don't believe that running against wealth is a good strategy, and so I am not a socialist. I don't support democratic socialists or anything of that nature. But I think the reality is that people are hurting right now. So it's not about socialism versus capitalism, as my colleague tried to just paint it in that way. Right now, it's about who's going to fight for Main Street. And Democrats, we did lose the young voters, we did lose the working class in the last election. But I think a lot of people are now realizing that that was a mistake, and now they are frustrated with both sides. But we look at the numbers, the polling numbers left and right, and we see that they are not happy. Independents are not happy. Democrats are not happy. Women writ large are not happy with what's happening right now. And so there's got to be a place somewhere. Someone has to speak for the actual middle class and working class people, but it's not happening, and that's the frustration.
So what I find so interesting about that is what you say is happening right now. You know what is happening? The man that they just voted to put in office is facing more injunctions as a president on one of his top 2 issues, illegal immigration, than any other president in history. I mean, I mentioned Obama. There are others who got rid of hundreds of thousands to millions of criminal, illegal aliens in this country without a single injunction. Trump is fighting lawfare again. So that's what's happening. And I can imagine those voters aren't happy. I'll let you both go. Thank you very much.
The New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gaining traction among Democrats as a new poll shows her as the most favorable politician in the Empire State, surpassing Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer by a wide margin. Let's bring in Brett Baer to talk more about this. So let's take a look. This is a Siena College poll. This is pretty extraordinary. I mean, take a look at the favorables and unfavorables for Schumer and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Schumer's favorables, 39%. Her favorables, 47%. Then among Democrats, his favorables are 52%. Hers are 64, 12 points higher. I've talked to some Democratic operatives who say it would be a fool's errand for her to try to run against him in 2028. Maybe it's not looking so foolish.
No, I mean, you look at those numbers, they're significant. I think, John, they're, the Democrats are searching. They're searching for leadership. They're searching for something that really fires people up. So far, AOC and Bernie Sanders are scratching that itch, but it's early. I think Democrats are in search of a message. I'm not sure that her ideological pitch is going to, in the long run, be the way the Democrats go. But right now, she clearly is getting a lot of attention and a lot of support.
Hey, Brett, good to have you on. Well, here's Doug Schoen, a Democrat, describing the state of his party. Listen.
Right now, it's a group of angry people who oppose Donald Trump. When I worked for Bill Clinton, Steve, and we talked about it, we were a centrist party offering alternatives to the Republican Gingrich revolution. Right now, it's just raw anger, as we see with AOC and the oldest Democrat, Bernie Sanders.
It doesn't sound so promising for someone speaking about his own party, but it seems they didn't get the message. I mean, now with them talking about dark woke and getting more angry, and I don't know, did they not see what happened in the last election, and did they not have this look within?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think the postmortem has not really been analyzed by the Democratic Party because, I mean, if you look at the big issues, DEI was an issue, immigration was a massive issue. They are talking about the economy, and obviously the tariff policy is making people anxious, so they're tapping into that. But how far it goes, and with that side of the party, it's a question of whether you can expand the base, and if independents are buying AOC and Bernie Sanders what they're selling. Not sure. Think it's a little early.
You know, if AOC and Bernie Sanders are emerging as the leaders, you wonder, is the Democratic Party looking for a new generation of leadership or just an angrier generation of leadership? But one long-serving member of the Democratic Party, Dick Durbin, has said it's time to hang up his boots. Listen to what he said on X just a little while ago.
I truly love the job of being United States Senator, but in my heart, I know it's time to pass the torch. So I'm announcing today that I will not be seeking re-election at the end of my term. We're also fortunate to have a strong Democratic bench ready to serve. We need them now more than ever.
So he's been there one way or another since 1983. He's been a senator since 1997. In terms of this idea of passing the torch, who's it going to be passed to? Because there's a lot of insurgent candidates out there. It look like they're going to launch primary challenges against some long-serving Democrats. Let's put it up here. Nancy Pelosi's got a challenge. Brad Sherman's got a challenge. Jan Schakowsky's got a challenge. Indiana congressional candidate George Hornato is challenging. So which way is this going to go?
Yeah, listen, I think that this whole David Hogg thing about getting the young people to run is a massive part of the push in the Democratic Party. I think they look at their leadership and the Jim Clyburns and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Steny Hoyers and the Dick Durbins and the Chuck Schumers, and they say we need to be younger. And I think that that's going to be a big push and pull of the Democratic Party as you get to the midterms. You know, Dick Durbin's been there a long, long time. There are many other Democrats in Illinois that are probably going to rise to the occasion. However, I think that we don't yet know where the leadership of the Democratic Party is going to be or come from, and maybe it's somebody that we haven't seen yet.
Reading directly out of an NPR article about these young candidates, it reads, their campaigns are centered around a shared dissatisfaction with how sitting lawmakers have fought back against Trump's second-term agenda. And you think about that, Brett, and you think, okay, they're still not saying they stand for something, right? We don't know what it is they're promising those voters other than we're going to fight back.
Yeah, and that's really the message, Sandra, is we're going to fight. You know, look at Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey on the Senate floor. It really wasn't filibustering anything, but he did hold the record for the longest speech at 25 hours. Look at Van Hollen going to El Salvador. What was that to solve? It did do a lot of press conferences and a lot of attention and a lot of oxygen, and it showed a fight. And that's what AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing as well. The question is where the message is.
You know, all this primary activity against longstanding Democrats sort of reminiscent of what the Republican Party went through over the course of a few cycles. So we'll see what happens. But as you point out, we're still a long way away.
It's early. It's early.
Good to see you, Brett. We'll see you tonight.
Too. Is gaining real traction now with the Democratic Party. So maybe she's got a little eye on where could I sit, while Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's popularity is tanking. A new poll from New York State voters shows Schumer's favorability is at the lowest in 20 years. AOC's, on the other hand, is surging 10 points from 4 years ago. She also hit a fundraising record, $10 million in the first quarter of this year. So that's a big deal for her. I don't know what it means for the party. That boost fueled largely by her Fight Oligarchy tour, although she does like to hop on, you know, different private transportation, which is great. Just don't tell the rest of us not to do it. And she's on that tour with Senator Bernie Sanders. It looks like she's seizing on her newfound popularity.
We got them running.
No, it does have a beat like Notorious AOC. Anyway, I don't know who she's talking about, because the only people on their back foot because of her and that movement right now inside the Democratic Party would be centrist and more moderate Democrats. And back in her own district, look at the real story of AOC. Constituents have described conditions as third world and are demanding help to crack down on illegal sex work and drug activity.
Lawless, anarchy. You get to do whatever you want when you want.
Like the first thing you see is like
prostitutes around among Roosevelt Avenue, all those vendors.
I've been here my whole life, and this feels like I'm a tourist in a third world country.
However, some in the Dems are questioning whether Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the far-left platform should be at the forefront at this point or any time. California Governor Gavin Newsom says the party has not found its way since the devastating election losses. He told The Hill, quote, "I don't know what the party is. I'm still struggling with that," end quote. Wow. Okay. Well, she's eating every bit of morsels off of your plate, dude.
Disintegrating right before your very eyes. That's the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party's engaged in a bit of self-reflection, but as part of that self-reflection, there is a growing and obvious divide, a divide that gives them no real direction for the future. That brings me to today's Big Three. Pete Buttigieg today went on the Flagrant podcast with comedian Andrew Schultz, and he talked about some of this self-reflection.
I do think my party needs to do a much better job, especially with the kind of finger wagging that you're talking about. I think we are like very prone to that. And I've seen it happen on any side. I think a lot of people, you get this sense of like moral conviction, and you're so sure of it that you start to think it makes it okay to be
But this self-reflection hasn't yet led to clarity. Gavin Newsom told The Hill, "I don't know what the party is. I'm still struggling with that." Well, part of deciding who you are is deciding who will represent your party, who is the emblem of Democrats. And Jasmine Crockett, while she probably will not arrive as a national symbol or national voice, gave voice to, yes, even something they might need to consider, charisma.
I think that one of the things that we've got to do is focus on how we communicate, not necessarily exactly what we say. And so I know that there are those that want us to stick to perfection, but honestly, some of the most watched moments that I've had have been when they were anything but perfect, right? I think that if we focus on really being very cognizant of our audience and speaking to them in an authentic way, which looks different depending on who you are, I don't think that, honestly, policy is what we need to be fighting about.
That's simultaneously stupid and smart. It's simultaneously wrong and right. Every lefty looks to look at Donald Trump as charismatic and to try to copy or reinvent his personality. And there's no doubt his charisma helped carry him to redefining the Republican Party. But they overlooked the role of policy. He drove immigration reform all the way dating back to 2013, 14, and 15. He's been talking about tariffs for more than 4 decades. But still, it is important. You have to find a leader with charisma. Enter AOC.
Capitalism has not always existed in the world, and it will not always exist in the world. Medicare for all would save the American people a very large amount of money.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
Should he run again? I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
All right, listen, okay, listen.
Together, these bills not only stop climate change, they tackle the intersecting crises of climate, economic inequality, and racial justice.
How many private jets do these CEOs need? It is insatiable.
These billionaires have not paid their fair share.
For many on the left, that's charisma. Look at this new poll out of Siena College. AOC has a 47% of favorability rating. That compares to 39% for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. She is the person rising to the front of the Democrat Party. But as I mentioned, there has to be policy underneath the personality. Here's what the AOC is for. Medicare for all, housing as a human right, a peace economy, honor in immigration, and the Green New Deal. If she arrives at the top of the Democratic Party, that represents a real progressive shift, and they won't go without a fight, not the establishment. Nancy Pelosi in 2019 said this about AOC. She said all these people have their public whatever in their Twitter world, but they don't have any of the following. They don't have any following. They're 4 people. That's how many votes they got. Remember, to that, AOC said that public whatever is called public sentiment. And wielding the power to shift is how we actually achieve meaningful change in this country. AOC is looking to disrupt the establishment among Democrats, and she might just pull it off. Joining me now is former Democrat campaign strategist Evan Barker. Evan, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here. I don't dismiss her personality. I don't dismiss her ability to win over Democrats. I do question whether or not tripling down on progressive policies like those laid out by AOC are what will ever bring you back to a general election win.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I can say it is almost impossible to actually find a truly moderate Democrat these days. You know, part of the reason that I believe people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama are being so quiet these days is because they know on some instinctual level that their party has been completely overtaken by the squad, by AOC. They know that she truly is the future face of their party. And part of the reason that this has happened, Will, is because people like Pelosi, Schumer, Obama, they don't have any true ideology themselves beyond just neoliberalism, which has failed. You know, and it's ironic to me also, besides neoliberalism, the other ideology that they have is in service to the oligarchy. And so
elitism.
Basically, it's allowed for the far left wing of the party to come in and basically be the loudest voices and recapture the Democratic base and push the party extremely far left on social and cultural issues that do not appeal to everyday, regular, working class people in the Rust Belt and in the middle of the country. And those are the people that AOC is going to need to be able to win over if she actually is able to pull off a win in 2028.
Yeah, I don't want to be cocky and dismissive. I don't want to look over across that screen at AOC and not acknowledge that she does have some charisma and personality that will win over some constituency. But her policies continue to be the part of the 20% proposition. All this talk about, you know, Donald Trump takes the 80% side of an 80-20 proposition. Well, AOC is the 20% side, and you can't win with a 20% side of the proposition. So Democrats have to find that magnetic, charismatic leader that actually understands issues that attract Americans.
I agree with you. And I think a lot of them will just say, well, you know, AOC is charismatic. She might be from Brooklyn, but she can always pick somebody like Tim Walz, who, you know, will appeal to the working class guy in the middle of the country. I know, I would actually agree with you. I'd have to laugh too, because it is just so absurd. But I think that, you know, they are truly lost. They haven't completely accepted the fact that it is their policies that have led them to this landslide defeat that they just experienced this past election. You hear a lot of them saying that it was a messaging issue. You know, that's why you're seeing so many Democrats now that are going out on podcasts all of a sudden. You know, they think they just are speaking to the wrong people, or that they need to broaden the audience that they're speaking to, when the reality is that, you know, the entire country already knows what they stand for, right?
Right.
It was those things that they rejected, and that's really what they need to be focusing on right now.
All right, we'll focus on that. Thank you for the conversation, Evan Barker. Thank you for being with us here today.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.